Meet John and Lisa. They've worked hard their entire lives and they have $1 million saved and they are ready to retire. But the big question they have is, will it be enough? So in today's video, we're going to walk through their plan and we're going to show you a few adjustments John and Lisa could make along the way that will allow them to live a retirement with more confidence, clarity, and true peace of mind as they do all the things they want to do in retirement. We'll look at their income plan for retirement, we'll make some adjustments to their tax strategy, and we will also show you an example of what an investment strategy might look like for someone with $1 million and the income needs that John and Lisa have. My name's Ryan, I'm the founder of Denali Financial Group, and I've helped build hundreds, probably close to thousands of retirement plans. And what I've learned in my years of working with clients is that retirement isn't all about money, right? It's about experiences, it's about doing the things you've always envisioned yourself doing in retirement, and we love helping people make those things come true. So we designed the Mint for More retirement method, and it's a planning process that goes step by step so that you can go beyond the basics with your plan and really build out a long-term plan that gives you the confidence to do all the things you've always wanted to do in retirement. So today, as we walk through our planning process, you'll be able to see how John and Lisa were able to gain more confidence and peace of mind as they navigate into this next step of retirement. So when we start to build out a plan for someone like John and Lisa, the first thing we like to determine is how much income are they going to need. First things we've got to figure out are what is their Social Security and do they have any pensions or real estate income or farm income or whatever that may look like, right? And if we look at John and Lisa, it's pretty simple. They only have Social Security income coming in retirement. They've got $30,000 from John and $15,000 from Lisa. So they've got $45,000 of Social Security income, but for most people, that is clearly not going to be enough, especially if you want to do some traveling and some other fun things. So let's look at the rest of this. Their spending comes in at about $85,000 per year, which means John and Lisa are going to need to take $40,000 out their first year of retirement. But a couple important things to think about here. One, John and Lisa's entire savings, their nest egg, is in John's former 401k. It's now in a traditional IRA. That is a tax-deferred retirement account, meaning anytime John and Lisa access this money, they have to pay taxes whenever they bring that money out. So really, if they're taking $40,000 out of it, they've got to be taking a little more to pay the taxes. And the other side of this is obviously over the course of time, that $40,000 they need is not going to be the same forever, right? We've all felt it the last few years. Inflation can have a huge impact on your retirement. So their withdrawal needs, if we look at their cash flow report, they're going to need to be taking more and more and more for the rest of their life. And so how do we make sure that our investments are positioned in a way in order to combat inflation and make sure that we are outperforming inflation over the course of time? So let's look at John and Lisa's plan as it looks today. This will not include any sort of tax planning. This really doesn't include any investment changes to their strategy. They kind of just have their investments sitting in a 50-50 portfolio, and there's really not much strategy behind how they're going to take the money out each month or each year, and they're just kind of let it ride, and that's what they're concerned about. They don't want it to look like that. They want to have more of a clear strategy behind each and everything they do. But before we look at the impact the planning can do, let's just look at if they don't do any of that. What if they just sit back and kind of put it on autopilot? Here's what their plan would look like. So as you see, this starts off pretty solid. Their assets are maintaining, they're making enough money in the market to offset the withdrawals, but over the course of time, inflation really starts to kick in, and you'll see that by the time they're out at age 85, there's $739,000 left and continuing to go down, and by the time they get to 90, there is still $483,000 left, which in some ways is a really good thing. But what we don't love about this is it doesn't leave much margin for error. So let's look at some of these what if scenarios. What happens if inflation is higher than expected? Right now we're factoring in about 2.5%, a little over 2.5% inflation. What if it's 3.5%? We've definitely felt that. So what type of impact does that have? Well, now you'll see that instead of having $483,000, they've only got $129,000 left at the end of this plan. So we haven't even got into long-term care, rising health care that could affect them if they do get sick later in life. So while this plan is doable, there's not a lot of margin for error. And if they're going to want to be doing things like traveling and updates to their home, it's going to be really hard for them to do that feeling confident knowing the margin of error is this thin. So let's start to jump into some adjustments we could make. So the first thing we want to start to build a strategy around is how do we make their investments and their income work together, right? We want to eliminate what is called sequence of returns risk. And sequence of returns risk is where, as you'll see here, their net cash flow after taxes and everything, they've got to be taking out $43,000 that first year, $44,000, $45,000. What we want to avoid is them taking out close to $90,000 those first 2 years of retirement, and in that same time span, the market sees a drop, right? The worst case scenario to get started here in retirement for them would be taking $90,000 out of the portfolio while also seeing that portfolio drop 15 or 20% like it did in 2022, right? So we want to make sure their investments are positioned. And the way we look at this is we call it safety income growth, and it's 3 buckets of money. Each bucket you're going to give a purpose to for your money. So the safety bucket is where we're going to put maybe the first 2 or 3 years of income early in retirement. And so safety, that's going to be cash, that's going to be CDs, money markets, whatever that may look like. This is going to be money that is not going up and down in the market. It is completely safe, protected from downside. So next, we want to build out their income bucket, this second bucket here in the middle, and we want to have that built out to handle their expenses for the next 6, 7, 8, maybe even up to 10 years, right? So these are going to be more moderate investments that are more generated around income. So this could be bonds, this could be dividend stocks, this could be certain types of annuities that pay a guaranteed lifetime stream of income, right? So these are going to be relatively safer investments sitting in this income bucket, but the whole goal and strategy behind these is to set yourself up for future income that you can count on in the future. So that's safety, that's income, and then the last bucket is growth, right? And this is long-term money. This is the money that we do not want to worry about for the next 10 years, because when I mentioned sequence of returns, right? If the market is down 20% year one of retirement for John and Lisa, we want to be able to leave the growth money alone. We want to let it catch the rebound as it always has. So if we are taking money out of that growth bucket early in retirement and the market is down, when it recovers, there's not going to be as much money there to catch the recovery, right? So we want to make sure we aren't taking money out of that early on in retirement, and we look at that money as 10, 15, 20 years away. So after we've put together the safety, income growth, investment, and income strategy, we now want to look at taxes, because this was definitely a concern of John and Lisa's, because all of their money sat in the tax-deferred retirement account. And so if we look at their projected taxes over time, what you'll see here is they continuously just go up in the future, right? This is their tax bracket. This is where they're going to be. And because of higher inflation, higher withdrawals, this is what that's going to look like. And they didn't like the idea of just continuously paying more and more taxes each year, because we don't know what tax rates are going to be in the future, right? They know today they're in the 12% bracket, but they don't know if the 12% bracket will still be 12%. It could be 15, it could be 18, who knows, right? So what we like to look at doing is, can we put together a strategy to maybe maximize that tax bracket we are currently in. And so we call this incremental Roth conversions. And so what we're going to be looking at with someone like John and Lisa is implementing these Roth conversions. And what we're doing here is we're going to be, after they've taken out the money they need for their income, we're going to then convert money to make sure we stay within that 12% tax bracket, right? So in this scenario, they're going to be doing a $58,000 Roth conversion, meaning they are paying the taxes ahead of time, but the goal is to lower taxes later in life. And for them, it was important. They wanted to reduce the taxes for their children if they ever inherit this money. And what we love about this is, yes, even though they're paying more in taxes these years where they are doing the conversions, over here, their taxes essentially go away, right? They have now converted enough money into the tax-free Roth IRA that if we come down here and look, their effective tax rate is now 0%, and for the rest of their lives, they're living in that 0% tax bracket. And they loved the thought of that. They liked taking control of their tax situation now, paying the taxes where they know tax rates are today, rather than putting it in the hands of future legislation changes. And what that did is it set them up to not worry about taxes later in life when their expenses may be higher than ever. And it set their kids up to inherit tax-free money rather than inheriting money that they would only have 10 years to pay the tax on. So this is the power of tax planning, being proactive with tax planning. So if we come back to this first page we looked at and we see their lifetime portfolio value, if you remember, they had about $483,000 left at the end of their plan in the first scenario, without the tax planning, without the investment and income planning. And now this green is, you see the value they've gained. And so if we come out here and look at age 90, now they've got over $1 million sitting there at the end of this plan. And they feel much more secure knowing that in their late 80s, they have close to $1 million. They feel much more confident if they were to see some rising healthcare costs or see higher inflation, right? So this is where the power of planning can be so strong. So that right there is why we like to walk each of our clients through the step-by-step Mint for More retirement method. And if you'd like to learn more about that method, go check out denalifinancial.com. The link is below. Or if you just want an idea of where maybe your plan could get some improvements, maybe add some efficiency, go take our retirement readiness quiz below. It'll just give you an idea of where maybe your plan is lacking. So that is it for today. As always, please like, please subscribe. We will be back with more videos here in the future. Thank you and have a great day.